So let's crack on, and I do hope you'll come in because you've all got experience of searching at a greater or lesser degree, and you know, that's what will make this session interesting. Otherwise, it will be me banging on. So we've done all that. I don't know who likes Ranganathan's 5 Laws of Library Science. I do, and I think you can apply all 5 of them to providing a search service one way or another. But I think the one that really makes a difference here, the one that applies above all others, is the 4th law, save the time of the reader. That's really what we're doing. I lose count of the number of times that I've read things in the professional press over the years about the death of the mediated search. It's a long time dying. People have been saying for ages, oh, well, end users can do their own searches. We won't need to provide a mediated search service. But actually, the demand is still there. It's still a useful thing to do. And the reason it's a useful thing to do is because it does that. So let's ask ourselves where searches come from. And people don't, I think, ask for evidence search. They find them particularly pleasurable things to have or to fondle. They ask them because they have a question that needs answering. And I'll be talking because I work as a clinical librarian. I'll be talking mostly about patients, but of course, for those of you in public health settings, substitute population for patients. But a version of this that have been varying ones over the years is that in daily practice, you might get 5 to 8 questions for every 10 patients you see. Some studies have made the number of questions that arise in a consultation higher than that, some lower, but that's a reasonably recent one. The other thing I'd remind you of, and if anybody can place this quotation for me, I'd be most grateful, but I remember it being attributed to Michael Carmel, who the more senior among us will remember, who once said, at the end of every search lies a patient. So the reason we take on searches and the reason people come to us with search requests is, again, not for its own sake, but because there are questions that need to be answered that relate to the way patients are diagnosed, treated, and looked after, and the ways the services that enable us to do that sort of thing are organised. So why would you ask a question? And I think you'll probably all be familiar with something like this form. This is the form that we use here in Brighton in our knowledge share system. But it's replicated throughout NHS libraries because it's one of the ways that we report our statistics. We ask people when they request a search for some information. And one of the things we ask them is, why are you asking this search? Sometimes people tweak these locally, and we have indeed done this. But the fundamental things we've got down here are audit. You're doing an audit study locally. You're comparing your practice against a gold standard and working out what goes on. So you need to know what that gold standard is. A business case, you might be putting forward a proposal that involves some money, some resource, and you want to be sure that it's backed by the best evidence possible.
Tom?
Hello.
Sorry, I think we are having a problem in viewing the slides. They haven't been changing for the majority of us. So if you maybe share again, maybe that will help, because we haven't seen any of the slides.
Ah, that's maybe a flaw. Okay, let's try that.
I think with Teams, it gives you various options on which part of your desktop to share, and you need to pick the right one.
It does indeed. Now, I had it on slideshow, and I thought you were seeing the slideshow. Does that advance?
No.
Rats.
Can you show
okay,
your
my workaround in these situations is to show you the rather ugly presentation in its native PowerPoint form. So can you now see the introduction slide?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll go like that if you don't mind. It looks pretty hideous, but it will at least do the job.
Make the job, yeah.
Yes. So you couldn't see Ranganathan's 5 laws of library science while I was banging on about them. So there they are. There is a reference to give this some spurious academic credibility. And I think I'd got to this point. So I was showing you this slide with reasons for a search. Audit, business case, care of a specific patient, I think I got up to. That's something that quite often a lot of services, I mean, certainly mine does, will make the top priority. So if a search comes in with that box ticked, then it goes to the top of the list. Commissioning, coursework and study. Now, a lot of us put that there as a little trap for the user, because if they tick that box, we'll say, aha, you're on your own, matey, but we will show you how to do it. General interest CPD, which is a bit of a catch-all. Patient information. So increasingly people will be wanting information that they can use to inform materials that they're developing for patients. Research and publication, I guess the majority of the ones I do certainly fall into that bracket. Service changes, developing local guidance and policies. Systematic reviews, we've made that a particular one on our system because we want to be able to count the number of systematic review searches we're getting. They're on the increase, with all the caveats that they're not often for somebody who hasn't fully appreciated what a systematic review is, but nevertheless they're there. And teaching and presentation. So those are the reasons people might ask for a search, the ones that we collect statistics on. But when we think about how we receive and negotiate those search requests, they come in many other forms, don't they? So could we have a little brainstorm about how you receive search requests? For example, do any of you get them from a face-to-face meeting with somebody?
Yeah, we sometimes do, yes, to clarify.
Yeah. Or indeed, sometimes you can get the corridor conversation where somebody passes you and then turns around and says, aha, I've been meaning to talk to you, I'd like a search.
Yeah, also by just email to me as an individual,
Yeah.
also by email to any role-based accounts that we have. So lots of different ways.
Indeed. Telephone?
Text messages.
Text messages.
Yeah,
Twitter?
telephone as well. Yeah.
Anybody had search requests via Twitter or other social media? I have.
Ooh.
No.
And I have, and I wish I had a screenshot of it here to show you, but I did have relatively recently a search request by letter, which was had at the bottom dictated by Mr. So-and-so and signed in his absence by his PA. And that's very old school. I've only had one in recent years, but it's quite nice that the old traditions are still with us. So my point here is that searches can come to you in multiple ways. And yes, we'd like everybody to use the online forms that we put up for them to use, because that makes them answer a lot of the questions that we want answered. But life is rather different, and so we'll get them in multiple forms, and we need to be able to capture the information that we need from those. And I often like to say to clinicians when I'm talking to them and expounding the virtues of PICO, that if you ever talk to me about a search, you will hear the cogs chugging round in my brain as I try to put whatever it is you're saying into a PICO format. Moving on our web form, we also ask for all sorts of other bits of information. We ask them to give their search a title. We ask them to give us some explanatory text, alternative terminology, anything they want to exclude, what the background is to their search, study designs, language, etc., etc. I won't labour all these points. What I think, whether you use a web form or any other thing, what's important is to think about the various parameters that there could be for the search and how you can capture that information as soon as you can. Because sometimes you get one chance at this, don't you? How many of you, if you get a partial request, will find that your attempts to get further information out of the search requester fall on completely deaf ears? You get no replies to your emails, no response if you try to bleep them, nothing at all. You just have to make do with what you've got.
Can I comment?
Of course.
Recently, we started working with the quality improvement on providing searches to support some of the project. And when we showed them our detailed, similar to yours, search request form, they didn't send us anything. So we looked at SBAR search and then 2 hours, and then we started merging things and trying to get what can we get from them that will help us find what they want, but at the same time, make it as easy for them to fill it, so they will fill it up. And so we came up with a one-page form that we sent to them, which they feel better about.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's an art, isn't it? Getting the best information that you can out of them in limited time. So particularly if you have the corridor conversation with somebody, they're probably off to do something else. They don't have time to tell you, oh, and I don't want anything before 2015 and only animal papers. You're going to have to make do with what you got. As a bit of a cautionary tale, it's probably quite important that you think about the way you yourself record things. So in the good old days, I used to carry a paper notebook around with me. And here is a page from it with 2 search requests that I picked up in a clinical governance meeting. Now, when I came to look at those again a couple of days later, I had considerable difficulty in working out what they were about. In case you're interested, that's what those things say. Fortunately now we have all sorts of lovely ways of note-taking. So with apologies to people who don't use the splendid technology that the Apple Corporation provides to us, I use an iPhone and an iPad, and I use an app called Drafts, which I use to make all sorts of notes. I use another one called Evernote sometimes. I can use other text tools, things like Text Expander and Clean Text. Those are all very useful for getting things down. If you're anything like me, your memory is fragile and unreliable, increasingly so as you age, and getting some of this stuff down somewhere where it can be recorded, and recorded clearly, not in your awful handwriting if you're me, then that's a good thing. Okay, so someone's come to us with a search request. We've managed to capture as much information as it was possible to about their request. The next phase, I think, is planning your search. And I'm indebted to my colleague Rachel Playforth from this service for this little tool she has. She has a spreadsheet and it's a spreadsheet that uses color, so it brings joy to my heart. And she uses this spreadsheet for every search that she undertakes. And you can devise your own, do things the way you want to, or there's lots out there that you could cannibalize. What Rachel's does is it works as in a PICO format. So I'm showing you the first two columns here for the P, the patient population problem, and the I, the intervention or exposure. And in here, and she builds this document up as she's working on a search. In here, she'll put the original keywords that she gets, and then she'll start thinking about synonyms, doing a bit of brainstorming using dictionaries, thesauri, all sorts of tools. Never despise the dictionary, by the way. I find some of my colleagues remarkably reluctant to use a dictionary. I don't understand that. I love dictionaries. Who loves dictionaries out there? Maybe I'm on my own.
You should keep an eye on the voting. People are raising their hands.
Right, okay, let's have a look.
And they're put in chat as well, so I think you're not on your own.
I can't see any.
Oh, so if you click on the people icon, you could see all of us. And if you click on the chat one, which is at the top, you have like a small chat.
Yeah.
You could see the conversation.
Yeah. Right. So let's go through those of you who've raised hands at this point, because that's probably quite a good one. I'll take you just in the order you appear here. Igor.
Yes.
You had a comment?
Yeah, basically, you asked us to raise our hands if we like dictionaries.
Ah,
yes.
excellent. Right, okay. If you were just raising your hand to say that you like dictionaries, then, I mean, apart from the fact that you're now my friends for life, you can lower your hand. If you're raising your hand because you had another question, leave your hand up and I'll come to you. Sally, did you have a question?
No, sorry, my hand just got left up when you asked about liking dictionaries. I do like dictionaries.
Right. Okay, another dictionary fan.
She likes dictionaries so much, she's keeping her hand up.
Yes, okay, let me take it down.
Jolly good. And Alison? I think maybe Alison is away, so I'll come back to her later. Okay, so I was showing you that planning matrix. This next thing is a question of style, I think. And I have a reference at the end to the excellent Andrew Booth's paper on searching styles, because people will have different styles and there will be some from whom the strategy emerges fully formed. And there will be others who have a more iterative, if I can use that awful word, approach to developing their strategies. But however you do it, it's often quite a good idea to go in and try running a scoping, quick and dirty search to get a feel for the volume of the literature, to start to get an understanding of the sort of way that the vocabulary is used around the topic that you're interested in. If you want to do something more rigorous at this stage, as you're starting to develop your strategy and take it into the databases in anger, you may find the press tool quite useful to use. And I'll say some more about that in a little while, but it's a checklist that's been devised for the peer review of systematic review searches. but it's equally applicable to any sort of search. So here in Brighton, we use it for our internal search peer review that we conduct one with another every 6 weeks, I think it is, Igor. And the PRESS tool is an excellent checklist and makes you think about whether you've forgotten anything. So you don't need to do it with a peer. You can use it on your own. Another matrix, this one I stole from Leeds. It's available on the Leeds University website in their systematic review support section. And it's a way of, again, recording details about the search. This becomes particularly useful because ideally, when we're doing a search for somebody, we want to make that search reproducible. When we supply somebody with search results, they ought to know not only what the results are, but also what the results are telling them, so that's some sort of synthesis or summary on our part, and how we arrived at those results. Now, in the full-blown systematic review search strategy reporting, you would want it to be entirely reproducible as a laboratory experiment. That's maybe not necessary for the day-to-day search, but nevertheless, they do need to know something about how you found the results that you did. Otherwise, you might just as well randomly Google. While we're talking about search execution, and as I said at the beginning, I'm not going to go near the issues of particular interfaces in this, but let's think a bit about saving strategies. So again, I'm going to hold myself up as an example of how not to do this and show you my saved strategies on Ovid. So this is the after. And so you'll see, if the slide's big enough, that I now give all my searches a date, and that comes first, and then a name and subject, and the database that it's run on. Before I did that, my Ovid searches look something like this. So here are my COVID ones. And I can't for the life of me tell which one's which. Well, I can tell a little bit about them, but I really don't know what they are. So when you're saving search strategies, particularly on the native interfaces, because we're going to have to use multiple ones, it's good to have a convention that makes sense to you about how you save these. And remember, we've been spoilt with HDAS because HDAS does the saving for you. When you're searching in Ovid, there's no auto save. So if you make changes to your strategy, those are not going to be reflected unless you save it again or save it under a new name. So the old computer lesson that we learned the hard way 30, 40 years ago, always save your work, is as valid in 2020. Managing results. You can get results out of systems in multiple formats, of course. Word we know and love. Some people like to get stuff out in Excel. There's RIS and the various formats that will talk to reference management software. And some will even allow you to get stuff out in XML. And if I was clever, I would know what the utility of having XML results is. Well, I'm guessing that it is so that you can then use them in other computer programs. What's important again here is if you're going to be able to make sense of large volumes of searches, large numbers of results saved in lots of different places, is that you use some convention that you know and remember and which becomes second nature to you. To manage your results. Let's have a quick look and see if there's anything interesting in the chat. Well, the chat is, of course, definitely interesting. Steve is telling us that in EBSCO, yes, you also have to save all the time. No hands up that I can see, so I'll press on. Presenting reports. So I've carefully not said anything about knowledge share yet, because I know not everybody uses it, and we do in Brighton, but of course we made it. One of the things I like about it, though, is the time that it saves when you're sending out search reports. So they're automatically formatted for you. They will give you automatic numbers of results from different sources. They'll rank them all. You can put the strategies in and so on and so forth. So it saves an awful lot of work that we used to do by messing around in Word or other things. But I'd like to ask you a question. Let's make it audience participation time. What do you think is important when presenting search results to somebody who's asked you for a search? You can put your hand up or you can just fire away.
I think letting them know exactly where you've searched and what you've searched for, and asking them for their feedback to see if it's actually of use to them or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we need some narrative, we need feedback, we need detail of results and where they came from. What else?
Search terms.
Yep. In the chats, Tom has said reminding them of their query, which is certainly useful. It may well be the case that they've asked for multiple searches and they can't remember which one is which, or even though they've only asked for a single search, they might not have remembered what it is.
Remind them of the limitation you used as well, because sometimes they might want to expand or narrow more and dig deeper. So
definitely, yes. So that they know if they've got 50 results, they know why they've only got 50 when there are many more, but some of them go way back. Links to the full text, says Vicky. And I definitely, that's one of the things that I think really adds value for people who are receiving search reports, is if they can go to the full text quickly and easily. We sometimes do something, I don't know whether any of you do this, where if we've found documents that are particularly crucial, we might actually include the full text of that, copyright permitting, in the search report. So we might embed in there a PDF or a Word document of a particular one. Clear presentation, says Sue. Yes, very much so. And that's one of the reasons why homegrown, trying to bring together multiple sets of Word documents and making them all into a pleasing and coherent whole can be good. Luca says, is it worth highlighting why particular resources were chosen? I think very much so, yes. If you can include some discussion of why you looked, say, in CINAHL but not in MCARE or the other way around, that may well help the recipient.
I think that when you send people something, they might be receiving the results on just a mobile phone. And for that reason, I think it's got to be really succinct, no junk, no whole piles of text that they need to wade through to actually find what they want. And I do always send back a few downloads, perhaps 3 or 4 actual full text papers, which I've found, which I think are especially useful. And then usually say there are others in the list, let us know if you want them. But I do think a lot of them just operate purely from a mobile phone, and we've got to think about getting our information much smaller, briefer and to the point.
Yes, I very much agree with that. Do any of you do search summaries?
Yes.
That's a yes from
Frankie.
Frankie. Hello, Frankie.
Hi.
Good. Top of the class.
Oh, as usual.
Certainly in our service, we now have a target of providing more search summaries. Yes, it adds time to your job, but if we go back to Ranganathan's fourth law, it definitely helps the person who's receiving the search. So if they have a paragraph that says, this is the general direction of the evidence that I've found, or if there isn't agreement, you can highlight the disagreement, but it definitely is something that we think users value, even if it does make a bit of work for us. Excellent, and Luca has commented that he's trying to write summaries. There's a whole art to summarizing, isn't there? I don't know whether anyone who did the summarizing and synthesizing training, or indeed led it, that we had, was it 3 years ago now, wants to comment?
Yeah, I did.
Yes, and it is a knowledge for healthcare ambition, one of those things anyway, that we should provide more summaries. So I think that's definitely a useful thing to do. So we've gone from the beginning of a search right the way through to presentation of results. Steve mentioned feedback, and that is, I find at least, quite difficult to get people to do. I mean, we have quite a good system for eliciting feedback, but that doesn't mean that people will give it to you, and they frequently need a lot of nagging. Why is feedback valuable?
Feedback is how we improve our service and how we know what our users need. I guess what we think they need, I guess. Yes.
And indeed, it can give us evidence of impact that we can use in case studies and so on. But as well, I think there's for me as an individual searcher, I often have a gut feeling about searches. You know, sometimes I know I've done a search pretty well. I'm a modest sort of chap, so I wouldn't say I've done it brilliantly, but you know, I'm fairly happy with it. It's really useful then to cross-reference that with the user's perception of the search and whether they think it's good. Sometimes there are ones where I'm really not sure. You know, I'm pretty sure that from a technical point of view, I've located what there was to locate, but I don't know how the end user has received that, what their reaction was, whether they got an email from me and they opened it up and thought, what on earth is this? Or whether they thought, oh, this is useful. And getting that feedback, it's such a hard thing to do, but it is really, really, really useful. And you know, you can build things in where on the second Monday of the month, provided the moon's full, you go through all your recent searches and chase those who haven't fed back to you, or you can use something more free form. You know, I sometimes know that there are searches that are likely to get good feedback if I could only persuade them to. Sometimes I say to people, well, don't worry about filling in the feedback form. Just give me something in words over the telephone in an email, and I'll put that on the form for you if you're happy for me to do that on your behalf. But it is really helpful. It helps our services, but I think for today's purposes, the great thing about it is that you learn yourself from feedback. And Igor has put in the comments that feedback saves the searchers time when questioned by senior managers, and this is indeed true. So when it's appraisal time, if you've got some lovely search feedback to think, that may save your job for another year. Okay, shall I press on to the end? So we've talked about presenting the report. So really, for the last 10 minutes or so, I'm going to take you through some resources that you may find useful when thinking about your searching practice and developing it. Andrew Booth, for those of you who don't know Andrew, he's now, I forget his precise job title, but he runs the University of Sheffield's Shah Institute, which is their health research arm. Andrew started off as a humble librarian in what was then the South Thames region. This is an excellent article by him in Health Information and Libraries Journal, HILGE as we call it, to rhyme with bilge, back in 2008. But it's very useful. It's unpacking your literature search toolbox, styles and tactics. And the point of this article, if you need to be persuaded to read it, is that Andrew will show you how there isn't just one approach to starting a search. There's multiple things that you can use, and you can bring different tactics to bear in different situations. I mentioned the press statement, and this is the original reference to it. Very useful, and we've adapted it, as I said, in Brighton to form a framework for our local peer review. So, you know, keep press in mind and maybe check your searches against it. I am contractually bound to mention the Kent, Surrey and Sussex Libraries Searching and Training Forum wiki, and I'll send these slides around at the end, so you'll have the link to it. And also the London and KSS Regional Searching Guidance, which we promulgated earlier this year. The Canadian Search Standards Working Group did some very interesting work on defining the different stages of searches, mediated searching. It's quite detailed, so you may want to have a stiff drink before you look at it, but it is very, very useful. So I'd certainly commend that to your attention. There is an expert searching mailing list. It does require you to be a member of the Medical Library Association, that's the North American MLA. I would recommend it. I'm a member of CILIP, but I'm also a member of MLA, rather on the basis that you might want to join both the AA and the RAC. So if one can't support you, the other can. But more seriously, there's a lot of value to be had from that list. But as we go forward and as we develop our searching practice and as we wrestle with the new interfaces that we're starting to use, I think talking to one another here on Teams or talking to one another through the Kent, Surrey and Sussex and the London searching groups will be an excellent way of keeping in touch and learning some of the lessons. You can, of course, contact me. You're very welcome to do so, but I am certainly not the fount of all knowledge on this, and I think that we, as a collective, probably have more wisdom. So that's really all I wanted to say. Was it hopelessly vague and lacking in detail, or did it provide you with at least some useful things?
Can I comment first? I think, to be honest, it's better than what I expected, because I thought it will be a training. And what you did is walking us through your practice and sharing with us ideas about how you look at things. And I find it more valuable than running a training and showing us, you know what I mean? It was much more valuable than that. And thank you for doing that.
Oh, good. I that was the way I interpreted my brief, and I hope it was useful. There is going to be training, and it will be delivered in a much more professional manner by people who know what they're talking about on the native interfaces themselves. But I was trying to do something a bit different this afternoon.
And it was really good.
Oh, good. Yeah. Does anybody have questions? Well, I will send my slides round to you all, so you'll have those, and we'll be able to glean what knowledge there is to be gleaned from them.
I'm writing a tweet right now about this session, and I'm gonna definitely tag Andrew Booth to say to him how much he's influencing the libraries still. He was my supervisor for my PhD, and he always reminded me whenever I brought the librarian hat instead of the academic hat. And he says, "This is your librarian hat now. The librarian in you is speaking. It's not the academic." And it was just funny how he always brought the two in me.
Yes, yes. Andrew is a great chap. He has a gift for devising acronyms as well. So if you look at some of his research papers over the years, he always tries to think of an amusing acronym for his project.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking in the chat. Stephen is asking in the chat. Stephen Reed, if anybody has tips and advice on synthesizing and summarizing. We probably have somewhere some of the documents that we used when we did synthesizing and summarizing training in the region. That was a few years ago. I think Mike's left the chat now. Mike, are you still there, Mike? No, I think he has gone. Mike was one of the people who did the training on that. I might see what I can dig out. I mean, the documents on their own maybe don't help you terribly much, but if you try doing some, it's one of those things that the more you do it, the better you get at it. And if you try doing some and maybe sharing them with a trusted colleague who won't laugh at you too much, you'll develop them. It is time consuming at the start. I think everybody found that, that writing a summary is an extra stage, and you've already spent a lot of time on your search. Igor's saying in the chat that they are running a shorter version of that training, and Frankie points out that yes, that stuff may well be online. I'll see if I can dig it out, and I'll post it to the Teams group. Oh, and it's going to be rolled out nationally, so that's all very good. I think lots of people found initially the idea of synthesizing and summarizing quite daunting. There was the awful feeling, I think, that, you know, suppose you summarized something a little inaccurately, and you missed an important point about a clinical debate. Would a patient then die as a result? And would you then be hauled in front of the coroner?
That's a valuable question, actually, because when we synthesize and summarize, we're bringing part of our understanding of the literature we're reading, and each one of us will read it differently or understand it differently, and that will come out in our summary in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. What was interesting when we did the training, we started off with some sessions run by Tim Buckley-Owen, and then we worked in smaller groups and did, so each group was given a pack of papers on a similar subject and asked to summarize them. And there was considerable variation between people's summaries. But having said that, even so, the main points, so people understood correctly the drift of the evidence, if you see what I mean, what the literature was saying, and there wasn't much divergence about that. So I'm just stopping sharing because somebody wants to see my face, which is unusual. And yeah, people are debating in the chat the issue about conflicting evidence. And I think with conflicting evidence, as people have said here, yes, you need to acknowledge the conflicts and describe them as best you can. If there's no overwhelming weight of evidence one way or another, then that's an important finding. Okay, it's 3:30, and I did some teaching this morning. Oh, important point from Alison, including a disclaimer. I think most of our those of us who use ready-made search result forms like the ones that Knowledge Share provides, there are disclaimers built into that. But yes, it is an important point, and we should make sure there always are such things. Right. If you don't mind, I'm going to stop there because I was teaching this morning and my voice is beginning to run out. So you probably won't get much more from me unless you want me to type in the chat. But it's been a pleasure talking to you all.